Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. It is the final week before the election, and we are drinking from the news fire hose again. There was Vice President Kamala Harris campaigning with Beyonce and Michelle Obama, and you will not believe, well, maybe you will, what the former First Lady said to try to convince men to vote for her preferred candidate. And former President Donald Trump on with the top podcaster in the country, Joe Rogan. I think he's got 30 million views of that interview already on YouTube. That's amazing. We took a look at the Call Her Daddy podcast numbers with Kamala Harris. She's got about 600,000 to the 30 million that Trump just got on Rogan. Think about it. Plus a massive New York City rally at Madison Square Garden last night. Look, I want to tell you something about the Garden before we bring on our guests. I watched all of Trump's remarks, start to finish, and he did a great job. He made great points. He started with exactly the right question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And he went on from there, just nailed it. All of his points. On message, entertaining, great. Trump was not well served by those around him last night. It wasn't a Nazi rally. All that's nonsense. But I'm telling you, even for me, and I voted for Donald Trump last week, it was too brotastic. Okay? It was. You're trying to win an election in which you're hemorrhaging female voters. Maybe when you present in front of hundreds, thousands at least, at Madison Square Garden, you clean up the bro talk just a little so you don't alienate women in the middle of America who are already on the fence about Republicans. Do they have no women advising their campaign? Is there no actual woman sitting behind the scenes coming up with the guest lineup and saying, let's just have a word with the guys who are going to be speaking about this isn't the bar. This isn't their living room. This is a campaign. This is politics. We're trying to get him elected. We don't need to rally the base or guys anymore. And it's not helpful, even if we do want to rally the base or guys, to go full off-color insults to different racial groups and so on. I get it. Trust me, nothing that was said offended me. I'm almost unoffendable. But I understand how this plays, especially with women. And it was an effed up choice. They took what was an amazing celebration of Trump, exciting and well-attended and hugely enthusiastic, and gave themselves a big black eye. This isn't about the insane media, which did, of course, what the insane media is going to do. This is about them giving the insane media all these headlines that undermined the main man, Donald Trump, who did exactly what he should have last night. You effed up. Hopefully you'll do better in the closing week of the campaign. That's my take on it. Joining me now, the guys from RealClearPolitics. You can find them across the dial here on SiriusXM. They're on the POTUS channel, 124, every night at 6. Tom Bevan, who's co-founder and president. Carl Cannon is Washington bureau chief. And Andrew Walworth is chief content officer. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Imagine waking up one day to find out your home no longer belongs to you, that someone somewhere has stolen your property right out from under you. It sounds unthinkable, but it's a sad reality for some American homeowners, and it's a risk for anyone who owns property. House stealing, that's what the FBI calls it. And it's a form of real estate fraud, where scammers leverage loopholes in the system to fraudulently transfer your home's title into their name. Then they take out loans against your property or even sell it behind your back. By the time you find out, the scammer's long gone, leaving you, the legitimate homeowner, to clean up the mess. But right now, triple lock protection is available through HometitleLock.com, offering 24/7 title monitoring, alerts, and restoration services. You can sign up today at HometitleLock.com and use promo code Megyn for 30 days of protection for free and a comprehensive title scan to make sure you're not already a victim. That's promo code Megyn and HometitleLock.com, or just use the link below. Guys, welcome back. That was my take. What was yours? Who wants to take it first?
I'll start first because that's pretty much what my take was, Megyn. I mean, here you have a 4-hour rally that is reduced to basically a one-liner from this insult comic. And it overshadows the entire thing. And you're right. I mean, it is the media has taken it and blown it up into, this huge deal. And AOC was on Morning Joe saying this was a hate rally, and it just sort of plays right into their narrative. And, that's what the media, everybody knows by now that's what the media does. But the question is, who thought this was a good idea to let this guy come on stage and tell, multiple sort of an insult comic is a bad idea 9 days before an election. It's a bad idea at any political rally, quite frankly. And obviously you have to assume they didn't see those remarks ahead of time, or, someone should have said.
Those are the reports that they did not vet any of the speakers.
Exactly. And maybe they should have. I know, but whatever. They shot themselves in the foot, and
an unforced error.
The question is, well, yeah, absolutely. Total unforced error and political malpractice. And it's like, will it hurt them? Maybe it won't, but maybe it will on the margins. And when you're talking about, voters in swing states where this could come down to 5,000 or 10,000 votes or 20,000 votes in a place like Pennsylvania or Michigan, yeah, not a smart thing to do.
Here's what bothered me about it. I have nothing against this comedian. Comedy is meant to be irreverent. It's meant to kind of cause you to recoil at times. And I get all that. It's just time, place, and manner. This was a political event. It was not the Comedy Cellar where you should let her rip. And it's fun to offend people. I totally get that. Trust me, I totally get that. But at this rally, it wasn't just this joke, which will play you. And it wasn't just this guy, I've got to tell you. It was this comedian who made this off-color joke, but he made multiple jokes. He referred to something about blacks and watermelons. He referred to Hispanic people only, I don't even want to phrase it, but, in bed, how they'll only reach climax in a certain way. I don't even know how to clean that one up for this audience. Then he made this comment about Puerto Rico being a trash heap, which honestly, like that one, I can give him some slack on, because there's been tons of stories in the news about Puerto Rico being a big trash heap, right? Like they can't process the trash. Michael Schellenberger's tweeting about it today. So, whatever. If you actually know the news, it was right on point, but it's being taken out of that context and just used as an insult against any Puerto Ricans and Hispanics. But the thing that I wanted to say is that it was a very heavily brotastic lineup, as I said. A lot of guys who are Team MAGA who are like, yeah, Kamala sucks. And I say that. I insult Kamala's intelligence, not to be mean, but it's because that's how I really feel about her. But it was person after person after person, and it was guy after guy after guy. And there were very few women. There were a couple. And I was left feeling like that's their club. They're in their club. That's the club that wants me and others to put them in the White House. And is there room for women in their club? Is there room for moderate voters in their club? Like, what you're telegraphing with this lineup and this messaging is a little exclusionary. That's how it felt. I know others disagree with me. I saw women all over the audience loving it, and they waited for hours to get in. To me, it didn't seem as much like a Trump problem as a problem of whoever organized this event, because I haven't felt that way watching the other Trump events. Andrew, Carl?
Well, Megyn, this has been a problem with this campaign all along. Donald Trump plays to the hall. We don't want him to be, he hired an insult comic. He's his own insult comic. But this idea that the people there loved it, Megyn, I saw some of that too. Tom and I were talking about this morning. They interviewed Puerto Ricans who were at the event. They said, I'm not offended. But how about Puerto Ricans who are not at the event? That's a much larger group.
That's the ones we're worried about.
It's this political malpractice on a scale it's hard to exaggerate. It reminded me of, Megyn, this is a little off color, but Haley Barbour, you remember him, governor of Mississippi, and before that, RNC chief, very funny guy. I once interviewed him about a candidate, I think it was Clayton Christensen in Texas, and he said, Carl, people understand a politician speaks all the time, and, you're going to step on your dick once in a while. He said, what they don't expect you to do is take it out of your pocket and jump up and down on it. And that's what was going on in Madison Square Garden, in my view.
Andrew?
Well, I wish that they were channeling what J.D. Vance has been doing for the last couple of weeks, if I'm trying to advise the Republicans. I think if you contrast J.D. Vance's media appearances and the way he approaches these things, if they had a little bit more of that last night, I think they would have been better off. But I agree. And the other problem, I think, is Tony Hinchcliffe. That's the comic. I had never heard of him before. Comedian, yeah. And, you know, this is his national debut, and there's no context for it. So if there, you know, Don Rickles is just because people have been talking about Don Rickles, who sort of did comedy for Reagan. He was a national figure. People knew him. He sort of had his own brand. This is now Trump's brand. I mean, Trump owns this, unfortunately. Now, you know, they have come out and said this joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. They're trying to distance themselves from it. But yeah, I do believe it's political malpractice that the day after that rally, this is what you have to do as a campaign. Not good.
That's right. A week before the vote, when Trump has been on a great roll. And who in politics thinks it's a good idea to have the warm-up comic who's on 4 hours before you or something drive your news cycle, right? Like this just, It's not worth it. That's not the forum in which you should take any risks like that. And this guy is funny and has a lot of material he could have gone to without touching on those particular items that I mentioned. The joke about Puerto Rico, I'll play to you because that's getting a lot of play. Again, take it for what it's worth, because there is a serious problem with garbage in Puerto Rico that's been all over the news, including on these left-wing sites. Michael Schellenberg has been tweeting about it all morning, saying, could you just hold on and have some perspective? I think it's the combination of, you know, all the things he hit, some of which I mentioned, that's leading, you know, to some of the hits on him. Here he is, Tony Hinchcliffe.
A lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody.
Well, I mean, maybe he's right? Was the guy set up for success? Like, if this is his normal comedy routine, who chose him? Who said, that's our guy for this? And then here's just a little bit more of the flavor of remarks that are in the news cycle today now, SOT 7.
And these Latinos, they love making babies, too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. I don't know about you guys, but I think that Travis Kelce might be the next O.J. Simpson.
In fact, she is the devil, whoever screamed that out. She is the Antichrist.
Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country.
Some sick bastard, that Hillary Clinton, huh? What a sick son of a bitch.
Now, some of those guys are friends of mine, and I really like them. My only point, Carl, is like in this context, you want to try to keep it classy, because if you don't, you are giving the other side a beautiful big Christmas gift with a big red bow on it.
Yeah, maybe they gave him the election. I don't know how much this is going to swing voters, but Megyn, if you had a new, you and I are both married, so this will, but if you were single and you were dating a guy and you were going to go to his house and meet his parents for the first time, and he said to you, Megyn, my parents have listened to your show and they kind of think you're a Nazi and maybe a fascist. Wouldn't you be on your best behavior during that dinner? Would you say all of the worst things you've ever thought of in your life? No, you'd put your best face forward. And that's what you expect a presidential campaign, any political campaign, to do. And that's not what they did.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing, Tom. So it was a total fail as an opportunity. And it was coming off of the Rogan interview, which was gangbusters. I mean, I just thought, I know the left-wing media is like, oh, he sounded rambly. He sounded crazy. I listened to that whole thing. And I thought Trump did great. He was really entertaining. And Joe Rogan did great. Like, the questions were really interesting. We hadn't heard all this stuff discussed before. And all I could think was like, this was totally brilliant. And they got this out the Friday before the final week. And then they just got so excited. They got drunk on their own wine and had the big party before they have the victory.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of sort of triumphalism among the Trump campaign. And I think that's been checked. And the problem is, you played those clips. I mean, those jokes weren't even funny. I mean, I didn't think they were funny at all. I think a lot of people just thought they weren't good jokes. And obviously the other speakers, some of the rhetoric was just over the top. And again, I mean, yes, there were some women there, and Susie Wiles is one of the people running Trump's campaign. So it's not like he doesn't have women around him that could have helped guide this event in a more inclusive manner. But again, we'll see whether we could be making a tempest out of a teapot here. It might not be that big of a deal electorally, but again, if he does end up losing this election by a few thousand votes in some of these swing states, people look back on this and be like, it might have been that moment.
God, I mean, I genuinely hope not. I don't think it's that big a deal. I just think it was an unnecessary self-inflicted wound. It was just an unforced error, and hopefully, we'll just move on and this will get out of the psyche. But I mean, I've listened to all these sound bites of these Midwestern women that we play on our show and elsewhere for, weeks and months now. And they don't like this stuff. They are not like New Yorkers, of which I still consider myself one, lived there for 17 years and was raised in upstate. They're not like us. They're not quite as brash. They're not quite as blue in their jokes and their commentary.
I will tell you, Megyn, my wife is one of those women, right? We live in the Chicago area, and she, said the other day when Trump had talked about Arnold Palmer, she was offended by it. I mean, she was like, do we really have to have this? Can't we do better than this? And I haven't spoken to her about the rally last night, but I'm sure she would feel the same way. And that's a small sample, but to your point, small sample size for that poll. But nevertheless, I mean, I think there is some truth to that there are a lot of women out there who are, on the fence and trying to decide. And this obviously doesn't draw people in Trump's direction. It pushes them in the other direction.
Yeah. I just feel like they're good on the base. I mean, I know that they're looking at this I know the New York Times was reporting there's like this 5% of men who are open-minded to Kamala and to Trump, who he's trying to target with podcasts like Theo Von and Rogan, and that makes sense to me. But if those people are on the fence between, if they're even considering voting for Kamala, this is not the way, my friends. This is not the way. Those are not the red-eating core MAGA base. And maybe a more velvet glove approach would be helpful. The reaction to the rally is something entirely different. I don't think the reaction has anything to do with what actually happened at the rally. The reaction was they're Nazis. We told you before the rally that they were Nazis. During the rally, as we watched, they look like Nazis. And now that the rally's over, we feel certain we've seen Nazis. So I disassociate the hysterical media reaction from anything that I have said and from reality. And it's a separate story. And let's get to it. Maybe the most absurd bit, but it was hard to choose this morning, comes from Jonathan Capehart, who both is a journalist, a print journalist, and also an MSNBC host on the weekend. Listen to him, SOT 9.
Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden comes days after his own former chief of staff went on record to describe his former boss as a fascist. But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
OMG, Andrew. For the listening audience, that was all the video was papering the screen there was of all these Nazis at the Madison Square Garden with doing the Heil Hitler, like as they said, as they were showing split screen of Trump signs, trying to lead you to believe there's maybe possibly it's the same event.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they did everything except for the slow dissolve, which is what I was expecting, where you go from the black and white footage to the color footage, and you feel like you're sort of moving through time. Yeah, I've been to Madison Square Garden, I don't know how many times. I saw Springsteen there. I saw the Police there. I love Madison Square Garden. I grew up outside of New York City. I got to say, and I've studied history, I was not all that familiar with that rally. I guess I should be, but for that to be the sort of the instant connection that you draw when Trump goes there is a stretch by any imagination. And I think that the problem for the Harris campaign in doing that is, again, it's getting back to that sort of Hillary Clinton problem of defining your half the country as being enemies. If you're saying that everyone who was at that rally or watched that rally is a Nazi, it turns obviously people off. I mean, they don't believe it. It's not plausible, even for the people who don't support Donald Trump. They really don't believe their friends and neighbors are Nazis. They may disagree with them, but I think this is totally overstated. So I think, I think the media is wrong to do it. I think that cherry picking the Trump rally, even those jokes that weren't funny and those statements that were offensive, they don't rise to the level of fascism in any stretch of the imagination. I don't think there was a single comment there that I would say is, oh, that's fascistic.
Not one. I agree. And here's the other thing, you guys. As boneheaded as some of these comments were, the Democrats, of course, live in a glass house. So they had George Lopez at a Walls rally last week. I think it was last week or recently. And he made his own off-color joke about Mexicans being a bunch of thieves. Watch.
Donald Trump said he was going to build a wall. And George Lopez said, you better build it in one day, because if you leave that material out there overnight.
Okay, so that's
all right, Megyn.
Hilarious. It makes no news. But you can't say funny. Puerto Rico, given all of its trash.
Funny.
It's funny, but I'm just saying, like,
there's a difference.
Do we have similar rules? And here's another one. You don't like that one, Carl. Here's another one.
No, I like Eminem. It. I like the joke, but I don't think it really
the comparison.
It's not the same thing. Yeah, and he's Mexican American, so he can say it.
Okay, here's the other thing. Last week they had Eminem endorse Kamala Harris, which they celebrated, and introduced Barack Obama. Yay, Eminem. He's from Michigan. He loves me. Eminem, who they were holding up, they loved his endorsement. Here he is in introducing Obama last week, just as a reminder, saw 12.
And upheld. And here to tell you much more about that, President Barack Obama.
Okay, and here's just a highlight of some of Eminem's musings on his records. Play nice, bitch. I'll punch Lana Del Rey in the face twice like Ray Rice. Christina Aguilera, better switch me chairs so I can sit next to Carson Daly and Fred Durst and hear them argue over who she gave H. fellatio to first. Got pissed off and ripped Pamela Lee's breasts off and smacked her so hard I knocked her clothes backwards like crisscross. He's rapped about machine gunning women, murdering his ex-wife, slitting a cheating lover's throat, raping his mother, called Mariah Carey a C-word and a whore. His lyrics are always featuring rampant homophobia, including stabbing gay and trans people. And here's just another one from the song Kim, which was released not long ago. Take a listen to SOT 10.
You were supposed to love me! Now please, bitch, please!
So sweet. That was from 2000. So, Tom, any double standard?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's some, but again, Eminem, I don't know that you can play that sort of guilt by association game necessarily with artists who Eminem has a persona, and you may not like it, but and you may object to it, but just because he introduces Barack Obama at a rally doesn't mean that, Barack
and also
Obama
endorsed her.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Barack Obama agrees with everything that Eminem has ever written in his songs or that Kamala Harris.
It's not about him. It's about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is in charge of who's going to show up at these events. She absolutely could say it's a no on Eminem. That's what I would say. I would say I like Eminem's music, but it's a no because this is not, again, a party in MK's basement. It is a political event. Go ahead, Tom.
No, look, you're right. Theoretically, she could do that. But I mean, if you did that for every person who had something in their background that was offensive or disputable, you wouldn't have anybody to introduce Kamala Harris anywhere.
Bleed, bitch, bleed. I want to slit her throats. I want to smack her so hard I knocked her. I don't think that one's that nuanced. Here's what I don't like about it. I didn't freak out that Eminem was there. I saw what was likely to come their way. But once you've had Eminem come out and touted his endorsement, you can take a seat about offensive jokes from a comic at the Trump rally.
Fair enough. But let's go back to the first thing you said about this Nazi talk. I want to pick up where Andy left off. I thought those statements about the rally from liberal political commentators was uglier than anything said at that rally. To say he can't play Madison Square Garden, the iconic venue in Trump's hometown, because in 1939 there was a rally there. I was at Madison Square Garden with Bill Clinton. I saw Jimmy Carter give a salute, that sort of arms straight out salute that would, if a Republican did it, they'd be all doing the pictures of Hitler next to him. And this is just, he has a right to play that venue. This little trick they played of unearthing this rally that most American voters, I knew about it, but most of them didn't. To somehow, I don't think Donald Trump did. And it happened before he was born. To link him with that is just such an underhanded rhetoric trick. I think, like I said, I think it was ugly, and I don't think it helps the country. And I think it was worse than these imbecilic people that we've been talking about who were the warm-up act.
They seem to be in a downward spiral right now. So they're amping up the Hitler rhetoric, the fascist rhetoric. Obviously, they're very worried about finishing this race in the place they want to finish it in, Andrew. And, today we have a new poll out, ABC Ipsos, that shows Harris up 4 nationally, outside the margin of error with likely voters. And I realize at this point, who knows what a likely voter is? I mean, it's like we're actually voting right now in many states. But that's a piece of good news for the Harris campaign, but there's been many pieces of bad news for the Harris campaign before this week, in the last 8 to 10 days, and all the momentum has seemed behind Trump, which to me explains why they're really spiraling right now, and the rhetoric is going up at what it seems the same rate as their chances, in their minds anyway, are going down.
Well, I do think that this is their closing argument. Their closing argument, the joy is gone. Their closing argument is she's not Trump. And I think that might be their best argument that they can make at this point. I mean, you have to remember, she was given a very tough hand here. It's been 11 weeks or so since she actually was, had the nomination. And she's running both as the agent of change and as the sitting vice president. You can't sort of square that circle. And that's the problem the campaign, I think, has had since the very beginning, in that she has to defend a record that the American people are not happy with. They're not happy on the 2 main issues, the immigration question and the question of the economy. On both those issues, she starts way behind. She's got to then say she's going to change things, but she can't, and she can't name a single thing that she would do differently. So she's both boxed herself in, but she's also been boxed in by the situation, I believe. So, yeah, I think this is their closing argument. And like I say, it may be the strongest argument they have. I don't know if it'll be enough, but that certainly seems to be clearly where they're going. She's going to talk Tuesday on the Ellipse here in Washington, D.C., sort of trying to draw, I guess, a distinction between Trump on January 6th and her today. So, that's their argument. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. But, Tom,
I'm going to play a little bit from her talking about why
not...
she chose this location. But before I get that, I want to spend another minute on the polls, Tom, because I heard Morning Joe this morning going off about how the polls have been really good for her lately and that the momentum is behind Kamala Harris lately. You're a data guy. You may have your own preference on who to win, but you're a data guy. So what is true? What is true about the polls lately?
What's true is that, I mean, you mentioned that ABC News Ipsos poll, and that is the only poll that has shown movement in Kamala Harris's direction over the last month. I mean, everything else has shown movement in Trump's direction to the point where, he's taken the lead in our RCP average. And it's been moving slowly in his direction. Again, the electorate's pretty locked in. So it's a point here, a point there. But it's definitely moved his direction in the swing states at the national level. You can see it in Kamala Harris's favorability rating. It peaked last month and has started coming down since then. Trump's is going up. So it definitely seemed like this race over the last 2 weeks had moved in Trump's direction. But not by a ton, but by enough that in this environment, it was noticeable and significant. And then the question is, again, still got over a week left, and we'll get a final round of polls here at the end of this week, beginning of next week, and that'll tell sort of the final tale of how these campaigns and how these candidates are ending these campaigns on an upswing or a downswing.
Mm-hmm. This poll says, according to ABC News /Ipsos, Harris is doing better because she regained a more customary Democratic advantage among Hispanic people and widened her advantage among suburban women while remaining strong in core groups, including Black people. Okay, hello. Let me just refer to my remarks at the top of this hour. There is no point in doing anything to alienate Hispanics, suburban women, or Black voters. 0 point. Hispanic voters, Biden won them by 33 points in 2020. Harris in early October was up with this group by only 12. And now they're showing her up by 30. Now, again, this could be an outlier, but this is what their data shows. Black voters, Biden won Black voters by 75 points in 2020. In early October, Harris was up with Black voters just by 69, so 6 points less than Biden. Now they're showing her up with them by 70, so not a huge movement there. And then the good news in this for Trump was independent voters. The poll showed Trump essentially even with Harris among independents. That's a group Biden won by 13 points in 2020 versus a scant Harris +1 now, according to ABC. The candidate who has won independents has won 9 of the last 12 presidential elections. So Trump hanging in there with the independents, but don't alienate Hispanics, don't alienate suburban women, don't alienate Black voters. These should be very simple rules. I'm not a political campaign operative. I am just a journalist, but even I can see with the magic of my eyes. All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. There's a lot to come back and discuss and maybe discussed. Stand by for more with the guys from Real Clear Politics who stay with me. Am I Racist? That's the Daily Wire's box office hit comedy and the #1 grossing documentary of the decade. Amazing. It's now available to stream exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. From the same team that brought you the cultural phenomenon What is a Woman comes their next big question, am I racist? In this hilarious and revealing film, Matt Walsh goes deep undercover, infiltrating the bizarre world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He gets the most powerful figures in the race-hustling establishment to say all the quiet parts out loud, exposing the absurdity of modern corporate and institutional diversity practices. And now you can witness the collapse of DEI from the comfort of your own home. But here's the catch. You can only watch Am I Racist with a Daily Wire Plus membership. Don't miss out. Head to dailywire.com/subscribe and use the code DEI to get 35% off your new annual membership. That's dailywire.com/subscribe. Be sure to use the code DEI for 35% off your subscription. Am I Racist? Streaming now exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Guys, I listened to that Rogan interview, as I mentioned, 3 hours long. Trump maintained his energy, his just humor, his mental quickness throughout. 3 hours. I mean, it's something you forget sometimes that Trump is 78 years old. Then went and did a rally in Michigan. There were absolutely no signs of cognitive decline, as some on the left are claiming. None. I listened to it all. He was fascinating. I really enjoyed, Rogan said it's going to be a conversation, not an interview. I like that. That's, I would say you guys, I do more interviews. We're members of the press. It's a different job. And what he did there was really interesting. He asked him about whether he's going to release the JFK files if he gets back in office, because he released some but not all when he was president the first time. And Trump said he would release them all. He said that before, but he gave a little color, saying it could embarrass some people, but he didn't seem to telegraph that there's going to be something earth-shattering in there, which I thought was interesting. He asked him if he believes in aliens and life from outer space coming to America and shooting at us in the air. And he said, I've spoken to these badass pilots who can't explain what they've encountered up there any other way. But Trump, to me, kind of telegraphed he wasn't necessarily a believer himself. He said something I've never believed, but I did speak with these guys. So that was interesting. They talked about, I loved the part about Trump described how he went in the fight against ISIS. And he's like, I ended ISIS. And he talks about how they flew into some dark country, unsafe at night, and they told them they had to turn off the lights on Air Force One, no lights at all. And Trump was like, really? Oh, God, what, are we in that kind of a situation?
And I flew in, left at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew I was going. I got on Air Force One and we started flying. And when we reached about half an hour away from Iraq, that was where the airport was, big airport, about a half an hour away, they said, sir, I'm sorry, you'll have to turn off all your lights. Why? We're getting close to our site, our land.
This is because it's too dangerous?
Yeah, too dangerous, because they see the light up in the air. They'll shoot at it, So I said, turn the lights off. Then they said, sir, we're going to also pull your shades if that's okay. I said, that's okay. The plane was pitch black, all the lights outside, the blinking, they go the blinking reds, they were all turned off. There's not a light, and I'm saying, I've landed a lot of planes, and you see little lights at least. There's nothing. It's just pure desert. And I said, okay, Captain, good, but I'm looking. Now you've been in many planes where it has the computer sign saying 1,000 feet, goes 1,900. 800. It's a computer voice, but it's an incredible voice. 700. I say, Captain, are we okay? Are we okay, Captain? There's no lights. 500. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a light on the runway. Nothing. And we're going in. You okay, Captain? Everything good? Yes, sir. No problem. We'll be down in about 1 minute, sir. And I'm telling you, Joe, there's always a light. There's not a little pin. And all of a sudden, psh, and you hear blah, blah, perfect landing like glass. That's how good. I mean, these guys, between the equipment and it's genius.
And he walked us through the moments he got there, and he talked to these, again, badass generals. He speaks very admiringly about our military leaders, not Milley, not John Kelly, but the actual guys out in the field doing the job with our troops. And talked about how good looking they were and how strapping they were and how strong they were. And Trump was clearly looking up to them in a way. And, how they laid it on the line, that the people were saying, no, this can't be done. It's going to take years to wipe out ISIS. And these guys were like, give us 6 weeks, something like that. Fascinating discussion. Talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal, and Trump put a lot of color on exactly how he would have done that differently. Talked about what kind of a moron pulls the troops out first instead of last. And even a child can get that. And talked about how at a rally he had once gone, he pulled a little child up on stage and said, when you're in a bad area, and you got the military guys there, so should the military guys leave before the civilians or after? And the little kid said, after. He said, see, even a kid gets it. I mean, it was really great stuff. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Talked a little bit about his debates on the presidential stage, talked about our debate back in 2015 and my question to him, which he cannot get over. Anyway, love the whole thing. And I'll give you a flavor for, you can hear him yourself, because this is an interesting thing too. His biggest mistake as president, South 17.
It's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're, the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up and you hear things that you're saying, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons or bad people or disloyal people or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. He's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me. He was good in a certain way. He's a nut job, and every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh man, Trump's going to go to war with us."
That is pretty charming. What did you guys think?
Well, yeah, I think Rogan is amazing. I think no one else is doing, or no one in national politics is doing this. 3 hours to sit down with the presidential candidate and have a conversation. Like you say, it wasn't really an interview, it was a conversation, and that's what made it so interesting. And you're right. I mean, I think Trump pulled it off well, and it's a side of Trump that people who have spent time with him see that maybe the average voter doesn't, and that he is pretty thoughtful, I guess, in conversation. I particularly liked when he talked about the whales who were going crazy.
We have that. Let me play a little bit of that so they can hear what you're talking about with the windmills endangering our whales. SOT 19.
I think windmills are really disruptive. When you talk about the environment, they kill the birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses. It's like massive amounts of
Well, they're
birds.
also a massive eyesore.
Off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them. But where you have them, the whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What is happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. It's a vibration because you have those, those things are 50-story buildings, some of them.
Right, and they're
50.
super sensitive to vibrations.
They have
and
those,
sounds.
the wind is rushing, the things are blowing, it's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales frickin' crazy.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I just mean it's pretty interesting and pretty fascinating, and it showed a sign of Trump that I think people don't see. So I thought it was a smart thing for him to do, and I think it worked, as you pointed out.
And he could talk about anything. He could talk about anything.
Yeah.
That one of the things that impressed me about Trump was who the hell knows? Like, then they spent this whole section talking about UFC fighting, which Trump has a genuine interest in. I mean, I got nothing. That was like listening to an hour in Greek for me. But okay, Trump knew the fighters' names. He knew some of the fighting history. Like, he was in it for sure. And then going from ISIS, then he talked. Another part that was really interesting, guys, was Rogan asked about when he first got to the White House, what that was like. And Trump went through it. He was like walking through this beautiful house and seeing a Lincoln bedroom for the first time and talking about the history with Lincoln and the size of the bed and how tall Lincoln was.
And I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I had never seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom. And I was standing with my wife. I said, do you believe it? This is the Lincoln bedroom. I mean, it was amazing. Because look, if you love the country, but here you are, the Lincoln bedroom. And the bed, he was very tall. He was 6'6", which then would be like Barron.
Right.
Would be like Barron Trump. He's 6'9", but 6'6". He was very tall. Then on top of that,
There it is.
He wore that. Yeah, there it is. It's a long bed, elongated bed, and because people were shorter than you see. Some of the chairs are very, very low to the ground, actually, but he had the long bed, and they had you had the Gettysburg Address right under that. You can't see it here, but right there, the original version of the Gettysburg Address. And this is the original, and I'm looking.
It was like, that's exactly the kind of thing you'd want to ask Trump if you got to speak to him at like a dinner party. But we never get to speak to him at a dinner party, and no one ever gets to hear him at a dinner party. We only get to hear him across from people like me who start hammering him about the stuff that we are supposed to hammer him on because we're journalists. But that was great stuff. What do you guys think? Carl, Tom?
Well, you reminded me of something because he spoke about this admiration he had for the military. And this was a few days after the whole media establishment was up in arms about this piece in The Atlantic by Jeffrey Goldberg, in which it's really a very difficult piece to read. The thesis of it is that Donald Trump doesn't know anything about the military, doesn't understand their values, and has contempt for people who would sacrifice their life for the country. It's a very harsh portrait of him. But as I was listening to Joe Rogan, I was thinking that Jeffrey Goldberg's not like wrong. He's a great journalist. He doesn't make things up, but it's like half the story because it, like you were saying, Megyn, he gives this interview about the White House and how, charmed he was really to be there. And then sort of casually calls, I guess, Bolton and Rex Tillerson and John Kelly, these names, idiot, whack job, nut job, bully. And, that's all. It's of a piece. Trump is both of these people. He's the person who doesn't get the core ethos of the military and yet admires the hell out of them. And he sort of, my point is he came through in that way as a human being. And that's, normally you get caricatures, one side or the other. The MAGA people love him and think he walks on water, and the other side tries to claim he's Adolf Hitler. And of course, he's neither of those. He's a guy with a lot of charisma and a lot of talent and really amazing flaws too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it all came through in Rogan's talk.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to say I had a couple thoughts. And Megyn, you've interviewed him. I've interviewed him too. And I always tell people interviewing Trump is like sort of riding a verbal bucking bronco, right? You ask him a question and then you're trying to hold on. He's all over the place. Joe Rogan talked about this too, trying to keep him, respectfully trying to get him back on answering the question. After you've taken a tour, the weave, now we know it's called, he touches on 10 things. And certainly that's part of what was going on. I mean, the other thing too is, and this is for people who haven't thoroughly been broken by Donald Trump, right? Their brain's been broken. He's funny. He is a funny guy. And this is, when you see him up there, I mean, Russell Brand had a great thing over the weekend on YouTube, like, do you think, Hitler would be up there dancing to the YMCA and doing the golf swing? I mean, would Hitler have a comedian come up on? I mean, his rallies are,
Hitler did not have comedians. I looked it up. No comedians at Nuremberg.
Right. That was the worst Nazi rally ever. There were a lot of Jews there. There were comedians. I mean, if you're a Nazi, that was not for you. And that's part of what gets, and the people who, love Trump, that's one of the things they love about him is because he is funny and they're in on the joke. And the people whose brains have been broken by Trump, they're not in on the joke. And all they see is, the worst aspects of him. And they built him up into this giant, threat. And so that's why he's become such a polarizing figure. But his humor did really come through in that Joe Rogan interview.
One word on the windmills. They are a nightmare. And as somebody who owns property in New Jersey, those windmills along the Jersey shore are an outrage. They got killed in one area of New Jersey, Cape May, and we need to kill them and the rest because we've got a blue state left-wing governor who's trying to shove these things down our throat, notwithstanding the safety studies. Look what happened in Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket area over the summer, where they shattered all these toxins in the water. The kids couldn't swim. They are damaging the wildlife. They're a nightmare for bird life. They don't generate much energy at all. They're unnecessary. We have, as Trump says, a gold mine of fossil fuel energy in this country. It's just awful, and they must be stopped. But these left-wingers who have this extreme eco agenda are now trying to fact check on the damage to whales that they pose. And they're wrong because Schellenberger who worked for Greenpeace, who worked in the Obama administration to set up Solyndra windows, solar windows. He was a true believer and then saw how all of this stuff was a nightmare and organically came over to the other side, put out the following. He had a documentary called Thrown to the Wind that discusses the link between renewable wind turbines and whale deaths. Watch.
I saw another whale had washed up. It's becoming a pattern. Is it the windmills? Is it the pounding of the seafloor? How many whales is it going to take?
There aren't many places where the North Atlantic right whale can go. It's destined to extinction.
It sounds like they're like also like pile driving.
This is what the whale is experiencing when it comes out of my land.
What the United States is looking at is thousands of wind turbines in an area that our whales, our dolphins, our marine life, where they live, where they migrate, where they breed. It's only when they started going into the wind lease areas that we believe that the whales are dying.
So those red dots are whale deaths.
Precisely.
What a scandal.
No one wants to talk about it. Trump raises it. He was informed. He didn't know they were going to talk about wind turbines, but he had done his homework. And the other thing he said that was very interesting, Rogan was pushing nuclear energy, which is good. It's very good. It's efficient. Schellenberger loves it. And Trump revealed his hesitation to it. And he talked, it was a throwaway, but he talked about how he worries about how a nuclear plant would be a massive terrorist target. And it was like, this is great to hear him talk about this and like what's driving his thought process on energy. He kept going back to the fossil fuels. This was great, you guys. He just showed such a depth of knowledge on so many subjects, and all I could think, and of course Trump said it as well, was there is zero chance Kamala Harris could do this. I mean, zero. We know because she's refusing to do it. Rogan revealed he did offer her the platform. It wasn't Rogan who said, I don't want her. He offered it to her. He begged her again to do it. She won't because she can't. Why are you smirking at me, Carl?
No, I was on record on our podcast of having high hopes for her as a candidate and said, there is no evidence. This was me 6 months ago. There is no evidence that she wouldn't be a better candidate than Joe Biden. And I guess there's a little bit of evidence now.
That no evidence that she would not be, you're saying.
Yeah, I thought she was 59 at the time. He was 81 at the time. I thought she'd get her sea legs in a hurry and be a stronger candidate than she's proven to be. I don't blame myself for her shortcomings in these interviews, but I'm not happy about being proven wrong.
None of us is happy about her shortcomings. We'll pick that up right after the break. Quick break and then back with the guys from Real Clear Politics. Aren't they great? Love talking to them. Stand by. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. The app shows whether you're burning fat or carbs and provides tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, sleep, workouts, and stress management. So you breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and then based on your measurements, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the whole day. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals to get real-time insights. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It turns food into fuel. Optimal metabolic health translates to numerous benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen can also track your cycle, adjusting its recommendations to maintain a healthy metabolism through hormonal shifts. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Megyn to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/MEGYN for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. So guys, over on Team Blue, it didn't go very well this weekend either. First, we were told that Beyonce was going to perform at a Kamala Harris rally in Houston, Texas. Some 30,000 people showed up. Some huge number of people showed up. And Beyonce came out to the stage and said 4 minutes of words and left. There was no performance, but they did get a performance from the 91-year-old Willie Nelson, which I believe we call a bait and switch. And also we call bad politics. Andrew, if you were advising Team Harris, how would you like to explain that to the 30,000 people there ready to see, as Victor Davis Hanson calls her, Beyonce?
Well, I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan, so I will say I would have been happy.
You're the one.
And I think that there are probably people in Texas who agree with me. I actually saw Willie Nelson play a little while ago, and I brought my 2 daughters with me to that concert because I said, you have to see this. You will tell your children you saw Willie Nelson. He's an American icon, and I would rather seen him than Beyonce any day of the week. That's
your heroes have always been cowboys.
Exactly. Having said that, I'm probably not the target demo, and
I think not.
Yeah, I think big mistake, and an odd one, because you would think that I've been struck by this all along. I've said this on our show. You know, they have all of Hollywood behind them. They've got the best comedians, the best writers in the world working for Kamala Harris right now, and she doesn't seem to be able to perform at the level you would think. I'm thinking back to the dinner, the Catholic dinner with the sort of
Al Smith.
Terrible. The Al Smith dinner was just terrible. This was the same thing. I mean, whoever said, let's have Beyonce come up and talk for 3.5 minutes and leave, you know, again, political malpractice. Now, maybe not at the same level as what we saw on Sunday from the Republicans, but a lot of mistakes on both sides right now, I think.
And they put out beforehand that she was going to perform. It was all over MSNBC that Beyonce was going to perform.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but remember they did this in Chicago. The rumor went out she was going to, they filled up the place. It was hard. The lines were, the security was wild. The rumors swept the hall. Beyonce's going to speak, going to sing here, and she's going to, endorse Kamala and sing. And then she didn't even show up at all. So at least they got her to the venue this time. They're making progress. Maybe, I don't know, after Trump's inaugurated, they'll get her to sing or something.
She'll actually finally sing.
They did have Stevie Wonder, which was pretty good, though.
I mean, okay, you can't go by Stevie Wonder's endorsement because, yeah, for all sorts of reasons. I was going to make a joke, but I decided not to because this is not a day for good jokes. Okay. By the way, when we're all in person, I'm going to tell you my funniest joke in the world, and it is about Willie Nelson, and you will be both offended and laugh. So Kamala Harris is fake news. She does not have Beyonce perform at the DNC. She does not have her perform in Houston. She's fake news. And now she has debuted yet another fake accent. This one appears to be her pastor accent, and it's amazing. It might be my favorite one yet. She was at the Church of Christian Compassion in Philadelphia, and right in Philadelphia, check it out.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
Tom, come on. Have you ever seen someone so phony?
Look, and this is part of the problem of the campaign. And this was the interesting contrast, with that really became apparent over the last couple of weeks. Trump's just Trump, right? He wears his red tie, even when he's serving burgers at McDonald's. He goes to wherever he is. He talks the same way. He doesn't put on any airs of trying to be somebody other than he is, right? Meanwhile, Kamala Harris puts on all sorts of airs wherever she goes, to whomever she's speaking, to try and ingratiate herself. I guess this is the idea, but it comes off as inauthentic. It comes off as phony, and she gets made fun of for it. And voters know when politicians are authentic and when they are not. And usually they choose authenticity when they're in the voting booth. But again, they didn't get a chance to choose, at least on the Democratic side this time around. So this is what they've got. But she continues to do this, and it, one time it happens, not a big deal. Second, third, fourth, fifth time, 10th time, whatever we're on now, it does become a problem, and it is something that she, I think, is struggling with voters.
I'm going to need to hear that again. Can we hear it one more time?
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
I'm sorry, but that's amazing. That's my favorite clip of the day. She's done many accents, as you know. That is just one of many. I guess we'll meet. We've had what, like the Jamaican. Her dad was Jamaican. We had Jamaican Kamala. We had like the more sort of urban Kamala. Well, we have a montage of it. Let's take a walk down memory lane, and by that I mean over the past 2 months.
Have you no empathy, man? You know, for the suffering of other people. Have you no sense of purpose?
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. I love you back. We're gonna beat them in November. We'll beat them in November. And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Hello to all my Divine Nine brothers and sisters. And my sorors. And to all my HBCU brothers and sisters.
I got to be honest. It crossed over from like I was really enjoying it to I'm really worried about us. Like this can't happen.
My favorite was Jamaican Kamala because it was so out of context. I mean, she's on with Stephen Colbert. It's not like she was talking to all these other ones. She's in front of a group. She's in front of union workers in Detroit or whatever, and then she's there with Stephen Colbert and breaks out the "Have you no empathy, man?"
You know. Here's another one I got to show you. Maybe you've seen it, but she had some weird, cringy beer sit down with Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, in Kalamazoo. And they go to this bar and they're on camera. And for some reason, they chose to pretend that they didn't know microphones were there. It's like, oh, gee. What are these enormous cameras doing behind us and these big mics right in front of us? Whatever could be happening here? And tried to play it off like they were just having girl talk, private time, until it was like the big reveal of, oh, microphones. Watch.
I am having what she's having.
It's an Oberon, and it's made right here in Kalamazoo, which many are calling Kamalazoo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cheers. Okay, cheers.
Great rally.
Good. Oh, we have microphones in here listening to everything. I didn't realize that. Okay. So,
You'll
now
bleep
tell
my
us.
F words.
We just told all the family secrets. Shit. Anyway, it's good to see you.
Okay, just even on that shot, look across the bar. You can see all the photogs with their 35 millimeter cameras, all the lenses trained on them. Like, the notion that they didn't think there were microphones, that they were being recorded is absurd. It's a lie, Carl. Like so much of her. She's a lie.
Megyn, I think she's a method actor. You may be selling her short. I think she got into the role and then she forgot the cameras were there.
Oh.
And she's just in the moment.
I mean, if she had at least chugged that beer, I could have said maybe she was drunk, but she took the tiniest little sip ever because she's not a beer drinker. I can't handle the fakeness. I really can't. And because the reason is, it'd be one thing if she were fake, but she could be president. And you can't be dumb and be president. You can't be empty. You can't be soulless. You can't be undefined. You can't be unaccomplished in terms of actual legislation you've pushed through or goals that you've accomplished. Yes, she's won higher office time and time again, but the achievement of those political victories appear to be the sum total of what Kamala Harris has done. So it's as much as I love to laugh, as I love to laugh about pretty much anything, Andrew, I really am more scared. I'm concerned about us.
Well, I think, just in terms of these media events, the The beer drinking struck me as sort of the inverse of the McDonald's thing, where the left went crazy because they were saying the McDonald's thing was staged, as if it wasn't staged, as if anybody didn't know that. And then this is where it's like, oh, she's pretending like it wasn't staged, and so it's very meta in a way. And as you know, as you're trying to sort of consume the media that's out there, it's hard to sort of keep up with what you're supposed to be thinking. I do think on the accents, they call it style switching or code switching. It's African Americans talk differently to different audiences. Obama did it. Other people did it. I have to say, I've seen politicians in Massachusetts dial their Boston accent up and down, depending on whether they're in Dorchester or whether they're speaking, to a Harvard audience. So people do this. I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, the problem with Kamala Harris I think, is that this is all we know about her, is what we're learning about her in this sort of 11, 12, 13 weeks since she got the nomination. So that there's no sort of backstory, there's no sort of foundation on which to put this and go, oh, yeah, she did that, but remember when she did this 5 years ago or 2 years ago or 6 years ago. Whereas with Trump, you have this, he's just been in the national consciousness for 8 years. So it's hard to change anybody's mind about him. So every time she does something like this, it sticks out and becomes what we know about her as a people. And sometimes it's hurting her. That's for sure.
She, the other problem, obviously, and everybody knows this, is that she can't answer a question. Like, she just can't answer a question. She could never do Joe Rogan, back to the point Carl and I were exchanging before the break. And it's frustrating because we actually do really need her to answer questions given the job she's applying for. So this has led, I believe, directly to some of her sinking poll numbers. People, the more they get exposed to her, realize she doesn't have it. She doesn't have the intellectual capacity or the willingness to share ideas or even entertain them. And instead of just grappling with that reality, like some Democrats have, some like Axelrod, who was out, the word salad, this isn't good, it's not resonating. What we got this weekend was a lecture from Michelle Obama about how our standards for her are too high. That what we are expecting of her is to dazzle us, and that it's unfair. And she goes on to suggest it's sexism and racism that leads us to set these standards or to want Trump instead. Take a listen to SOT 34 to kick it off.
That some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse. All of this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
Dazzle? That's where the bar has been set, guys?
She said dazzle us at every turn. That's a straw man argument, in my opinion, Megyn. When she doesn't answer these questions, it's not just that I'm curious about what the policies would be as a voter of a Kamala Harris administration. I just want to know how she thinks. I want to see how her mind works. I want to see how she works things out. And to give these answers that just sort of meandering, that go nowhere, she's deflecting. It's what she's declining to answer. She's declining to engage. She's declining to show people how she thinks. And so I think Michelle Obama is wrong about that. And nobody's asking her to dazzle us at every turn. We're asking her to behave like a normal presidential candidate and give interviews that are, hold press conferences. She still has not held a press conference. She's given these selected interviews and in a press conference, there'd be follow-up questions. Somebody asked a question, her answer would raise another question. I just want to see how her mind works. I want to see what kind of president she'd be. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Now, Michelle goes on, Tom. She goes on to direct her message right to men and also women then too. But this is her closing message as we have, 8 days to go. Watch.
Please of politicians, mostly men, who have no clue or do not care about what we as women are going through. See anyone out there thinking about sitting out this election or voting for Donald Trump or a third-party candidate in protest because you're fed up? Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. To the women listening, we have every right to demand that the men in our lives do better by us. We have to use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment. I lay awake at night wondering what in the world is going on. And it's clear to me that the question isn't whether Kamala is ready for this moment, because by every measure, she has demonstrated that she's ready. The real question is, as a country, are we ready for this moment?
Tom, your thoughts on that? That our lives as women are worth more than your anger and disappointment as a man. That's the closing message.
Yeah. Once again, America has disappointed Michelle Obama. Just can't seem to rise to her expectations or something. Mm-hmm. Listen, broadly speaking, right, it is not a good idea to send out Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and everybody else to try and browbeat voters into, voting the way that you want them to, as opposed to persuading them and showing them through argument and through issues how your vision for the country is going to be better for them than the alternative. And they have settled on this idea that their closing argument is, Trump's orange man bad, right? It's been the Democrats, it's been what Kamala Harris, and they can get a certain amount of mileage out of that, obviously. I mean, you can see by the polls that they've gotten a lot of mileage out of it, but is it enough? I just don't think it is. And then to send people out, to sort of take this morally superior approach and tell voters how to think and what to do and how to vote. And if you don't, your wives and mothers and daughters and everyone are going to be so disappointed in you and all that. It's just not, it doesn't strike me as compelling. And I don't know that there's any evidence that it's going to move the needle.
Well, the other thing is we just had Barack Obama last week going, how do we get so divided? I don't know how we got so divided. Why don't you take a look at rhetoric like that, saying that if you're a Trump voter, your anger is going to cost women their lives. Not even a thought, not even an attempt to understand, you know what? There are actually a lot of men and women who worry about domestic terrorism, who worry about a nuclear bomb, who worry about crime on the streets of places like New York and thought things were better under Trump. We are not driven as a country, as a people, by the sole issue of abortion and what might happen in one state where they've restricted it. And they think it's all about those few women who cannot, in today's day and age, figure out how to get an abortion. Where, by the way, it may be harder than it was pre-Roe, but it's not hard. You can still get the abortion drugs. There are more abortions now than pre-Dobbs. That's a fact. But they think everyone is driven by what happens with abortion as opposed to those issues I just outlined. It's absolutely clueless, and it's just so divisive to look at the men and say, check your anger. I am more important. Me and my uterus. It's like, that's what's going to drive up the male vote, right? I mean, Andrew, I feel like this is why young men are like, forget these people. Those 5% we talked about. That kind of speech is going to make them go in there and pull the lever for Trump.
Yeah, well, the theory of the case is, I guess, that there's what they call dads out there, that there are enough men who will be cowed by this sort of rhetoric. it's hard, especially coming from Michelle Obama. This country did elect her husband, a Black American president, twice. We did give the popular vote to Hillary Clinton, a woman, once. It's hard to keep going back to this that this is a racist and sexist country when you look at what's happened over the last 10, 15, 20 years in this country. So I think it's a dry well. They keep going back to it. It may work again. I don't know. But I think that, overall, I think you do have this huge divide right now, or bigger than normal divide, along sort of sex, I guess. And the sleeper issue, I think, and Megyn, I know you've talked about it before, is the sort of the trans issue, which is out there as well, which I think is another one which is really turning off both males and a lot of female voters right now.
Mm-hmm. It is amazing.
Can I just add real quick, Megyn?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Again, it's always useful to remind people that if there's racism and sexism that is preventing Kamala Harris from being president, Democratic primary voters are the ones who rejected her in 2019. They got a good look at her and they simply didn't want to choose her. She didn't even make it to the starting gate in Iowa. And so, are you arguing, is she arguing that Democratic primary voters were racist and sexist in 2019?
Right. Well, the other point is the Democrats were on bended knee with 24 red roses begging Michelle Obama to run, especially when Joe Biden started to implode. They would have done anything to sub her in. Is it just Kamala Harris's race and gender only when it's in the name and face of Kamala Harris that being a person of color and a woman will stop you? And it's just, I'm so sick and tired of Michelle Obama whining about how racist and sexist America is. We made her rich and famous and beloved beyond any measure. Everything she has is due to this country, her Martha's Vineyard estate and her Chicago estate and her Washington, D.C. estate and her Hawaii estate and her trips on the David Geffen yacht. I am sick and tired of her complaining about us. It's like Oprah. Just shut up. All of your gifts are due to us. All we want to hear you say is thank you. That's it. That's what we want to hear you say. Stop ripping on the country. By the way, by current count, we have a current sitting vice president who's a woman and a person of color, and it happens to be the very same woman Michelle Obama says we're not ready for to ascend to the presidency. We have 4 women on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. 4. All 3 of the liberals are women. There's a conservative woman. Women have ascended to massive positions of power in this administration and the last as well. Not to mention people of color. Same. We've had a black president already. I know we haven't had a woman president. I firmly believe we will and we would if we found one who wanted the job, who was strong and knew her stuff. Unfortunately for Kamala Harris, it's not her. Okay, we'll find out for sure what the American electorate has to say in either 8 days or like 18 or maybe 8 weeks. We'll find out. It's unclear when we're going to know the result. Guys, thank you. Thank you both so much. Thank you all. Okay, in a minute, we are going to be joined by a Hollywood star who has taken the leap and endorsed Donald Trump. You're going to know him. Stay tuned. This year, supply chain issues have been more prevalent than ever. Whether it's the result of natural disasters like Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, global conflict, or inflation, the impacts are being felt everywhere. While they sometimes are a minor inconvenience, delays in accessing essential medications can become catastrophic. The U.S. relies on overseas sources for more than 80% of its generic medications. So what happens when there are delays? Or what if supplies are cut off? How will you care for your loved ones and yourself? The Jace case offers peace of mind for you and your family in the face of delays, shortages, and disasters. This is an emergency medication kit containing 5 life-saving antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. Simply complete a quick online evaluation to ensure you're prepared. The Jace case can also be customized with add-ons like ivermectin, ivermectin, EpiPens, and more. Don't wait. Consider preparing right now. Receive a discount on your Jase case by visiting jase.com and entering promo code MK at checkout. That's promo code MK at jase.com, ensuring you have the right medications exactly when you need them. Joining me now, a Hollywood actor who is not afraid to speak his mind, even when it comes to politics. You know him as Chuck Bartowski in the comedy series Chuck, or as superhero Shazam. Now he's one of the very few Hollywood stars to step out and endorse Donald Trump. Zachary Levi is an actor and founder of Nerd HQ, an organization supporting mental health and education. And his new movie, The Unbreakable Boy, is out this February. Zachary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Megyn. Long time listener, first time caller.
This is bold. This is even more brave than anything Shazam ever did. A Hollywood actor coming out endorsing not just a Republican, but Trump?
Yeah. I mean, listen, on the outside of it, the optics absolutely are something that is insane to a lot of people. And I understand that. And it was something that I thought and prayed a lot about before I did. I measured it all out. And there were a lot of things ultimately that, culminated in that decision. I mean, first and foremost, I would consider myself a libertarian, moderate, conservative leaning, but also I think socially progressive in other ways. Most of my life, my parents were Kennedy Democrats that became Reagan Republicans that taught me to have a healthy level of distrust of our government and all industry, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so my whole life, I've always just had my eyes open and my ears open to a lot of nonsense. And listen, I as I stated on Instagram, in a very long live, I didn't vote for Trump in the last two elections. I actually voted Libertarian in the last two elections. But this election is arguably, I don't know, 1 million times more important than any election, certainly since I've been alive, because what we're facing is either voting for someone that you might not love entirely. I don't love everything about Donald Trump. There's so many things that I wish that he wouldn't say or do. I think a lot of Trump voters are that, and so to lump all of us into like, oh, you must stand for everything he stands for. No, sorry, no. I would actually be a far more eloquent person. I wish he was. I wish he wasn't saying things like they're, this or they're that, the ways in which he can use pejoratives or whatever. I don't stand for that. I'm very much about love. I'm very much about being able to reach through and talk to somebody and see where they're afraid. And I think that Trump bulldozes through a lot of that stuff. But I'm sorry, we have two candidates. We have very clear examples of what they've done in this nation. And though I did not vote for Trump, he did a good job. He did a good job. For 4 years, the world didn't blow up. He didn't turn into the Nazi fascist that everybody accused him that he was going to be the first time around. We entered no more wars. Our economy was better. Our border was better. Even if I don't like all of his Trumpiness, that's true. All of that is true. And Kamala, though she might be fun to have a beer with or something, is not qualified in any way, shape, or form to be the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world. Absolutely not. And more than that, I think even if she's not aware of it, she would be a puppet of a much more nefarious system that I believe, you could call the deep state, you can call whatever you want to call it, but it is, I think, the duopoly, the thing at the top that's over all of it that really wants us to stay in all of these endless wars and keep all of us endlessly sick. So that's it. To me, it was like, it's now or never. I cannot sit on my hands. I cannot bite my tongue anymore. And more than that, I really do believe, and I've been preaching for a few years now, I do believe AI is something that everyone and across all industries, we need to be very wary of and alarmed about, because in my industry, in entertainment, it is about to, I believe, eviscerate all of our jobs. So I sat there and I thought, well, what am I really afraid of? Am I afraid that I'm going to not be hired by studios that aren't going to be offering us jobs anyway? Because basically anyone can sit at home and type, I want a movie that looks, feels, and sounds like this, and enter, and they have it. So I just kind of felt like, yes, maybe it's brave, maybe it's bold, but I feel like God created me to fight and be a leader and care. And if I can use my platform to do that, then I will do that.
So well said. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like you do. They look at Trump, maybe they have mixed feelings on him, but they think about somebody like Elon, who really does know a lot about AI, being in a leadership position, skinnying down government and finding efficiencies in it. And RFKJ coming in there. I know you're a fan of his, but you mentioned making America healthy again. You really get the feeling he can do it. Trump, he's been introducing RFKJ, MSG, and elsewhere by saying, we're not going to let him do anything on environment or energy. He's like, it's a little out there on that stuff for me, if that's what Trump's saying. But he said, but that stuff, right on. And that's an exciting thought, to think of RFKJ going in there and cracking down on groups like the FDA and all these others who work together to keep us sick.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, that was part of my journey. I was a Bobby Kennedy guy. I still feel like he would be the best president. I think he would be such an incredible president. And I supported him, and I was with him, and I was doing everything I could for his campaign. The Democratic Party, not Trump and the Republicans, the Democratic Party made it impossible for him to run. That's a fact. So, and then ultimately having, a non-primary, a non-democratic primary, just putting Kamala into where she was. But I went through Bobby. To me, Bobby is somebody who really understands. And by the way, also, I love his eloquence. I love that he reaches across. I love that he has so many reasons that he could spill and spew so much hate about so many people, given the history of his own family and what our government, I believe, has absolutely done to his father and to his uncle. And he doesn't do that. He takes the high road every single time. And he really understands what's going on, particularly with the health of this nation and the corruption that is going on in our food industry, our agricultural industry, our pharmaceutical industry, our energy industry, all of these industries, because that's what happens when you have lobbyists, when you have special interests, when you have money that can go from an industry to a politician in order to grease wheels, which is what we've been doing for far too long. You get so much corruption, and Bobby knows that, and Bobby really can get in there and do it. So once he dropped out, and once he and Trump really came together and they formed this unity movement, and then for Tulsi Gabbard to come in, I mean, really, Tulsi, she's how I ended up getting involved in all of this, because we became friends. I told her what I was concerned with, and that I thought she and Bobby were amazing, and that as difficult as it can be sometimes to want to stand in this Trump campaign because of those things that I might have issue with, I know at the end of the day, he's still the right of these two options, the right way to go. And then Tulsi said, hey, listen, this could be a difficult thing for you, but if you wanted to moderate our town hall, Bobby and I are going to do a town hall with the Trump campaign in Michigan. And I really felt like that was, as I thought and prayed, like, God, if you want me to really step into all of this, I need you to tell me, I need you to call me into this. And then for Tulsi to literally call me and say, would you want to do this? I prayed, I thought, I said, okay, I think this is that moment where I can do what I need to do. But because, like you're saying, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm voting for Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and JD Vance and everyone else that they're going to bring in this team, this Avengers, this Voltron, whatever you want to call it. And they're going to get in there and actually do what Donald Trump said he was going to do the first time, which is drain the swamp. And he has admitted that he couldn't do it, and he didn't do it because he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't even think he was going to win the first time. And he had no time for his transition team. And then it was loaded with a bunch of sycophants and horrible people that were the swamp monsters that Bobby Kennedy has very accurately pointed out. And so now they're privately funding. I love this, that Trump is privately funding his own transition team, not waiting for the government. So they are ready to go. And they are not compromised. That is the government that I want. That is something. Bobby is 100%. He and Tulsi are going to be let loose to be the bulldogs that we need to hold people to account. And by the way, and they will do it fairly. They will do it civilly. They will do it in love. I've sat with both of them. They are incredibly wonderful human people that really want, and which is why, by the way, they're not it's fascinating to me that the Democrats want to tout Cheney endorsing Kamala as if that's a good thing, as if somehow that's like a feather in the cap. That's a guy that almost everyone could agree on, both right and left. Once we all found out the weapons of mass destruction was a lie, all of us could go, that's not a guy we want. That's not a guy we want to trust. So his endorsement to me is nonsense. For Bobby and Tulsi, lifelong Democrats, to literally leave their party and say, no, the polls have shifted. If the Republican Party is now the party of peace and free speech and all of these things, and actually holding big business and industry accountable, then by God, that's where they want to be, and that's where we should all want to be.
That's exactly right. This is not your grandfather's Republican Party at all, especially with this team of rivals he's put together. Jordan Peterson, this is a reference you can understand, was referring to them as a bunch of Marvel superheroes. Exactly that crowd you just mentioned. Elon, RFKJ, Tulsi, Vivek. I can't remember if there was another one, but
JD.
all around Trump. JD Vance helping him get the ball, over into the end zone together, like each of them sort of working on their key issues. So you're getting more than just Trump. You're getting a team that we've seen now for years in the public eye. It's exciting. If he loses, that's one of the things I'll be most disappointed about the next day. Not just the loss of Trump and the elevation of Kamala, but the loss of all this opportunity, like what good that team could do for the country. It's just who looks at Elon and says, no, I don't want you. I don't want your mind helping us. Who looks at RFKJ and says, I don't want you cleaning up the water that my kids swim in or the food that they eat?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who think that, and I don't think that they're horrible people. I think they're people that have been propagandized to and lied to for far too long. And I ultimately think this is one of the greatest evils that has been perpetrated against really all of humanity, but I'll just speak for us in the United States, is that we have a media. And by the way, a lot of people within the media, those journalists, those pundits, I don't even think they're horrible people that are somehow in on this plan. I think they unwittingly are spreading a lot of the very misinformation that they accuse X and Elon and Donald and everybody else of spreading. But it's just simply not true. We have a bifurcated population in large part because half of the population or whatever portion of the population still believes the mainstream media and the stories that come out of it that would tell you that Elon's a horrible person, that Donald's a horrible person, that all of these other people are horrible people and you don't want anything to do with them. Everyone else who has already, I think, woken up to the idea that, I don't want to listen to any of that mainstream media because they're just puppeting. They're being puppeted. They are parroting. They are doing these are all talking points. These are governmental issued talking points. Whether those journalists know it or not, there is a lot of pressure through all of that. And everyone else, all of us, we're listening, we're watching your show. We're watching other people's shows. We're going to the non-mainstream, but I guess it's now becoming mainstream. So let's say that we're not listening to the legacy media. We are now tuning into where the truth can be found. And where the truth can be found because it's a lot of ideas that can be challenged. And the fact that they want to censor, that they want to get into X and they want to shut down thoughts and sentiments that are not in alignment with what they're trying to shove down our throats, that's where we get into a lot of trouble. The pandemic is a perfect example of that. There was the narrative that was being pushed on everyone across the world that we were leading, by the way, but with Fauci and everything else, the United States, in a lot of ways, we lead a lot of things. And we were saying, here's all the things you need to know. If you get the vaccination, you won't get sick. That turned out not to be true. If you get the vaccination, you won't transmit it to anyone else. That turned out not to be true. If you get the vaccination, you won't get seriously sick. That turned out not to be true. If you get the vaccination, you will not die. All of these things turned out to not be true. And there were scientists and doctors who were very early on saying, hey, wait a minute, you can't say those things. That's not true. Shut down, censored, literally their lives were destroyed. Now, 4 years later, shocker, it turns out that they were right. And there's no comeuppance, and there won't be any comeuppance. There won't be any. And by the way, and I'm not saying like comeuppance, like we should go destroy them. We should still act higher than that and love, but hold people to account. And Bobby Kennedy,
they don't even admit their error. And they're dealing with human lives. They don't even admit the error. They're happy to continue smearing like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya as some kook. Yeah. Even though he was one of the leaders on this, he was right all along. Let me ask you this, Zachary, because as I watch this, what's extraordinary, among other things, about your story and coming out is a lot of Hollywood actors who will come out and say I'm conservative, or I'm, even if you're not saying that, but like I'm ready to vote for a Republican, especially Trump. Maybe they're like not in the peak of their career. All right, like they're not risking that much in doing it. Sure. Your career is on fire. It's great. You're a big star and you're getting bigger by the week. So did you pause at all? I mean, you say you had the conversation with God about your values and how much you were going to stand up for them. But was there the other conversation with your agent who said, this is insanity, you'll never get cast again?
I mean, yeah, listen, I'm very intentional about what I do in my life, and I like to think through things and be wise as I can, which does not mean I don't blunder. We all do, we're all human. But when Tulsi invited me to go do that town hall, I knew that would be the beginning of what will be the next chapter of my life, and which would be out of this closet of not being able to speak up, even though throughout my career, there were moments where I would, or attempted to, or whatever. But, when you're surrounded by 90%, at least in, I would say, the above the line, the actors, writers, producers, directors, like that's a predominant, and that's where all the power is. That's the predominant, area of, I would say, liberal, progressive, Democrats. Tons of crew, by the way, and lots of other actors and directors, writers, and producers. But the crew within Hollywood and entertainment, there are so many conservatives. There are so many, but nobody can say anything. And I was done. I was done sitting on my hands, and I was done biting my tongue. And I talked to my team, and I said, I've been invited to do this thing. This will essentially be an endorsement of Donald Trump. I need you guys to know that I'm considering this. And to their credit, all of them said, we will support you in whatever you feel like you need to do. We're not going to tell you not to. We'll tell you that it might make this more difficult for us and for you. So, weigh that as you need to, but we will support you as a human being, because they know me and they know my heart and they know that I care. And listen, I would argue that while I am absolutely in a position in my life and in my career where I have a significant more amount to lose than other people that might come out as conservative or voting for Trump or whatever, I would still consider myself in the B plus A minus of the stair steps that are celebrity. I'm not a part of, and have never really been a part of, all the reindeer games. They didn't invite me to those. I'm not, so I could understand somebody else, and because there's levels to this, right? So anyway, my point is that, yes, I've gotten to do all these incredible jobs, but Shazam, the last Shazam didn't perform that well. Harold and the Purple Crayon didn't perform that well. I'm not trying to say, even though I appreciate the compliment, I'm in a really solid place in my career. I hope I will continue to. And I also, for what it's worth, have already been approached by lots of other people, though they have to remain silent, have come to me and said, I will hire you all day long. Like, don't worry about it. You'll work. So I'm not worried about that. Plus, there's so many other things that I want to do. I want music to be more a part of my life. I want podcasting and other things to be more a part of my life, because I like being able to do lots of different things and bring joy in lots of different ways. But like I said, I don't, when you feel God's call on your life, maybe there's some courage and there's some bravery, but really there's a lot of peace involved in that. And what is it? And ultimately, at the end of the day, I say,
in an industry like, Hollywood and so on. Like, tell us a little bit about your background. How did God, make his way to you?
Well, I grew up in like a Christian conservative home. My parents met in church in the 70s and like the hippie Jesus movement. And then had me and my two sisters. They got divorced when I was young. We grew up with my mom. My dad was much more, let's say, kind of religious, liturgic Christian. My mom was much more like spiritual, hippy dippy Christian. We never went to church. My mom was very anti authority, for better or for worse. But Jesus and spirituality was talked about in my household all the time. My parents would have friends over for, dinner, and they'd have wine, and they'd be talking about Jesus and praying for each other and speaking in tongues and like all of that kind of stuff, Mm-hmm. And then when I was 18, I just started pursuing God on my own, because I going to church on my own. I just didn't want to. I don't know. I just think we all have to go and explore that. We need to go down that journey and really figure out things for ourselves, and not just because our parents told us so, right? We have to challenge these ideals. Yep. And so, that was at 18, and I'm 44 now. So over this many years, my journey has been very circuitous and roundabout and all over the place in learning more and more about my creator, learning more and more about myself and who my creator has made me to be, and stepping into that identity and refining myself and becoming a better me. And that's through loving myself. That's why mental health to me is such a massively important thing. I had a huge breakdown in 2017. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't know why. I was so blessed to have people around me that helped me to, keep me on my feet, get me to therapy. I went to this life-saving therapy. I learned that I never loved myself. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 37 years old, and I'm just learning right now that I don't even understand what self-love is. And that led to an incredible journey with God and by the way, also in learning more about God and not just what I think were a lot of fundamental Christian concepts that we are all taught, but I think also burdened with. I don't, there's a lot of my Christian friends that I disagree with in what certain scripture means or doesn't mean, But at the end of the day, I will tell you that I absolutely believe that we are all children of God and we are all loved by our Creator and we are all called to love everyone. When Jesus talks about it, is what is it to love your neighbor? What is it to love those who love you? That's easy. That's nothing. It's to love your enemy and pray for your persecutors. That's love. And I live by that. And that's the thing that breaks my heart the most, is because we live in such a polarized, hateful world right now. And this is not just exclusive to the left. There are a lot of people on the right that behave in really sarcastic and snarky and horrible ways. And I don't think that's helping anything. I don't think you're helping bring people over to, if you believe you're fighting for the light and for the right, then fight for it. And don't be using tactics of darkness, And man, I feel it. I feel the darkness come at me. I step up and I say, and I in my live, I made it very clear for all of you out there thinking, how could you say you're a Christian or you're a believer or you care about mental health? How could you support this guy? And I'm like, y'all, you are trying to boil it down into ways that literally just don't make any sense, are not logical to what we're all looking at right now. Do I want everybody wants the perfect candidate. Everybody wants the candidate that represents everything they believe in. Oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if we could vote for a candidate that represented every single thing that we believe in and that we stand for? That'd be amazing. But we don't have that. We have two candidates. And of those two, only one of them, I believe, is actually not in the pocket of the corruption, right? So it's that simple. It doesn't mean that you can't be someone who disagrees with a lot of what Trump says and does, which I do. It doesn't mean that you can't want him to do better. I do want him to do better. But I know that the team around him is going to be one that will actually collectively fight for more of what will heal this country and less of what will break it more. And my faith plays a big part in being able to tune into that, And that's not to say that there aren't people on the left that go ahead.
I also think like a lot of the people in your industry where you live, they're suffering from, truly this false image that the media creates of Trump. Some of the controversies are real and he does say the things, but so many of them are truly fake news that he's blamed for saying something he didn't say, and then it becomes a narrative, and good-hearted, well-meaning people believe it because that's what they've been told by news sources they used to be able to trust. And then Bob's your uncle. Zachary, we have to go because the show is going to end. But could you? I would love to have you back. Let's do a longer show and talk about.
I would love to. I would love to. Yes. Listen, I'll be back stateside. I'm currently in Eastern Europe making this movie, and very grateful to be working still. I'll be back in the States in December, so maybe we'll circle up post the election and we'll talk more.
You're on. Thank you so much. Really love
Bless
meeting
you. Thank you.
You as well. Wow, what a guy. That's truly a courageous move in today's day and age, what he did. Tomorrow we will be back with Glenn Beck. Don't miss that.